The Yewlands Cluster Innovation Project involved 4 schools from the Yewlands cluster: Fox Hill Primary, Montini Primary, Woollywood Primary Special School and Mansell Primary. These schools identified early on that the high level of bereavement experienced by the children and families in this area was having an impact, and they wanted to feel, as a family of schools, that they were able to deliver an appropriate response and that staff felt confident and skilled to meet the needs of the children. The inquiry question posed was how to develop a school response to support children and their families suffering the impact of bereavement in an area where the influences and impact of drugs, unemployment, aspiration and poverty are high. Nicola Shipman, Executive Head at Fox Hill and Montini, explains why the issue of bereavement was a priority.
We decided to look at bereavement as a project as a family of schools because statistical evidence shows that our area of Sheffield and nationally has the highest number of male suicides between the ages of 19 to 36. And we recognise, I think, through discussions with ourselves as head teachers and with other colleagues, that actually we had a significant number of children within our settings that had experienced suicide of father and even mothers. So I think it was quite important that we recognise that.
As the project developed, a number of strands emerged: the production of a policy, resource bank and lesson plans, twilight sessions for staff to promote awareness, training for teaching and support staff across the schools to run rainbows support groups for the children, training and CPD for 3 to 4 members of the senior leadership teams from each school to come together for a day run by Winston's Wish, joint work with partner agencies including the local multi-agency support team, MASS, the Educational Psychology Service, safeguarding personnel and local and national charities, and approaches to individual families offering support where appropriate. Stephen Luke, head teacher at Mansell, and Marion-Holly, head teacher at Woollywood, share with Nicola Shipman their reflections on working together about a sensitive issue.
We were certainly surprised when we started looking at it in a more structured way that we tracked the performance of vulnerable groups of children in our school, and if you took the children who'd experienced the suicide of a close relative, they actually were a larger group than our EAL groups, BME groups, and yet we didn't look at their performance in that way, and so looking at it in this structured way has really given us a much sharper focus on how these children are performing at school and the additional support we need to put in around them.
I think another aspect for us which we quite clearly identified through the work as well was because our community is so tight-knit, such a close-knit community, and children transfer but also families are the same, that actually we were talking sometimes about maybe children in one school but had cousins in another school, or the children whose father had committed suicide, say in Y1 here, had then later transferred to another school within our family. And that learning or that understanding of the children and the families and the situation that they've been in was important to be transferred, and that wasn't happening. And also it wasn't just about the children in the immediate family, it was about the support for the community as well.
We've got an interesting example where a disabled child in my school has a brother in this school actually, and we've been working with this school with that child because he has some behavioural difficulties. Now, our knowledge of the family is such that we knew that child had unfortunately experienced quite an unpleasant bereavement, and we knew his behaviour had been affected, but he wasn't our child. He is our child now because we can work in partnership to meet his needs in this school. So that's really satisfying, very satisfying.
And for me, the other key strength that will come out of this is we're talking about support for the child, but it's supporting the adults involved with the child to give that support. Before, there wasn't that clear pathway, clear structure, and through the strengthening of our work, I really think there will be clear support mechanisms for the staff so that they're able to effectively support the children.
Another example, actually, of how this bereavement project has really benefited families and communities is, again, it's a school that's not here today, but a school in the family. They have a sibling to one of the children at the special school, and unfortunately the child at the special school has got a very poor prognosis, and I've made links with the head teacher of the sibling so that the work we've put together for this project is there and ready for that child when her little brother passes away, which he, unfortunately he will do. So not prevent, we're ready.
Yeah.
That's the point. So a little bit of preventative work going on as well. And again, that's because we meet so often as heads on various projects, and we're always looking for ways of improving things together.
Well, that communication, when we're looking ahead to the secondary transfer, we've got 3 children in Year 6 who are who've dealt with this situation. Some as recently as Christmas, some 3-4 years ago, but the impact is still there, and the fact that we work closely means that we can ensure that they don't just transfer, because you can see the impact still on the child who lost his father 3 years ago. You still see the impact on a daily basis with him. And it's absolutely vital that we work closely, as we do with our secondary school, to ensure they're aware of that, because it does explain his behaviours on occasions. It really does explain his behaviours.
I think there's a real element of trust though between us as a family of schools, as well as not only at heads level but subject leaders, but pastoral support through the support of people like the safeguarding director, so that every child is everybody's business. It's not just it's a child at one school or a child at another.
We've done other projects as well, haven't we, together, and so we've got systems in place, tried and tested methods of doing projects, like setting up somebody to lead it, and giving that person the capacity, and that school the capacity, to lead on something properly.
I think the beauty of this though as well is that we know staff move on, we know staff develop, but we also know that because of the bereavement work that we've done, there will be a team across the school, so it's not just one person. There are other people we can turn to, because what's really important, I think what we've found through looking at the children and identifying the families, is that no one case is the same.
And I don't think we should ever underestimate that as children, for all children, but especially children who've dealt with issues such as losing a parent, the one thing that has usually remained consistent for them has been the school. And it's not just enough for the school to be consistent, it needs to be really sensitive to the child and reacting in the right ways. And I think this really strengthens our ability to do that. And especially for those children that are moving on, because the one thing that has remained absolutely rock solid and consistent has been their primary school, and suddenly there's going to be that change. But just that, by working closely together, getting the communication right, knowing that things have gone in, and knowing that that work can be continued in that secondary provision, it's just so reassuring for me as a head with children moving on to, under these circumstances, moving on to secondary school.
Maybe, one of the findings or something that needs to be developed further then from this is similar to looked after children who have a named, looked after designated teacher. Maybe there needs to be sort of a bereaved children's designated teacher, so people are, somebody is the champion for those children.
I think to emphasise that in this role, the person undertaking that work is for the child. It's not for me to direct the person what to do, or the school to say you should be doing this. That work is for the child, what the child needs at the right time and at the right at the right pace. And I don't think that can be emphasised strongly enough. This is about what the child needs, not what we believe they need or think they need.
Yeah, I think it's essential that people do have training on bereavement, because there are ways of there's learning that can help you to actually cope. It's about dealing with a critical incident and having it in your head, but also having ways of dealing sensitively with a situation down on a piece of paper, because at that time when it occurs you have your own grief to deal with, and you need those bits of paper just to keep you on track, because you're there to support your staff, your families and the wider community. So to be stronger yourself, to have those strategies, to have that support is really essential.
I think one of, from undertaking the project and exploring the numbers of children and the vast numbers that we never thought imaginable, and I'm sure, Marion, you've got an even greater experience in that. It is absolutely vital that the training will really, really support not only the families, not only the children, but the staff in school and us as heads, and probably the city, about how we deal with this.
Yeah, we need to roll it out.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, actually, because people don't want to talk about bereavement, and heads must be seen to cope. I just think I think it's very healthy that this project has given us the opportunity to talk about these things, and to build networks, across the family and with other schools as well, in order to cope with this better. Yeah.